The Vorthik War fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with predatory satisfaction. Admiral Krestik flexed his secondary mandibles as the sensor reports flooded his neural implant. 67 ships strong. His armada represented the largest military force the Vorthik hegemony had assembled in 3 centuries. Today, they would claim their greatest prize, the complete eradication of humanity's furthest colony, New Cascadia, hung before them like a jewel against the void, its orbital platforms dark and lifeless. The planet's surface showed no energy signatures, no defensive grid activation, nothing but the cold silence of abandonment. Krestik's thorax rumbled with anticipation. The humans had finally learned fear. Tactical assessment, he commanded, his voice resonating through the bridge's bioacoustic chambers. Sub-Commander Velthaner's primary eyes dilated as she processed the data streams. No active defenses detected, Admiral. Orbital installations appear powered down. Surface scans show minimal life signs, possibly automated systems or small maintenance crews. Krestik's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. 3 months ago, his scouts had reported a thriving human settlement of nearly 2 million souls, mining operations, agricultural domes, manufacturing complexes, all the infrastructure necessary for humanity's expansion into hegemony. Space. The audacity had been breathtaking. The punishment would be absolute. They fled like the cowards they are, Krestik mused, his voice carrying across the bridge. Abandoned their precious colony. The moment they detected our approach vectors, but something nagged at him. Humans were many things: reckless, violent, unpredictable, but they were not cowards. In the 17 years since first contact, humanity had proven disturbingly resilient. They fought with a ferocity that bordered on insanity, adapting their tactics with each engagement. Even when facing impossible odds, they had never simply left. The hegemony's xenobiologists had studied human behavior extensively. These creatures bonded to their territory with an almost pathological intensity. They named their worlds, their ships, even their weapons. They buried their dead in the soil and called it sacred. The idea that they would simply abandon New Cascadia seemed, Admiral, Velthaner interrupted his thoughts. Long-range sensors are detecting something unusual. Krestik's secondary eyes focused on the tactical display. Deep beneath New Cascadia's surface, massive energy signatures were beginning to stir. Power conduits that had appeared dormant were now channeling enormous amounts of energy toward something. What are we looking at? Sub-Commander. Unknown. Sir, the energy patterns don't match any known human technology. The readings are substantial. A chill ran down Krestik's spinal ridge. In his long military career, he had learned to trust his instincts, and every instinct was now screaming danger, but retreat was impossible. The Hegemony Council had given him explicit orders. New Cascadia was to be glassed, its human population exterminated, and its resources claimed for the greater glory of the Vorthik species. Deploy the fleet in standard bombardment formation, he commanded. All ships are to target population centers first, then infrastructure. I want nothing left that could support human life. As his fleet moved into position, Krestik couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The abandoned colony, the lack of resistance, the strange energy readings it all felt orchestrated. But by whom? The humans had fled. The scans confirmed it, hadn't they? Deep beneath New Cascadia's surface, in chambers carved from living rock and lined with quantum-stabilized alloys, something ancient stirred to life. Systems that had slumbered for millennia began their awakening sequences, weapons that had been designed not just to kill, but to send a message across the galaxy. Powered up with the patience of mountains and the hunger of black holes. The humans hadn't fled New Cascadia. They had evacuated it. There was a difference, and the Vorthik hegemony was about to learn it in the most violent way possible. The first bombardment wave struck New Cascadia's surface with the fury of artificial suns. Plasma cannons vaporized abandoned mining facilities, while kinetic bombardment, RODs punched through agricultural domes like bullets through paper. The planet's atmosphere screamed as superheated gases expanded and contracted in violent thermal cycles. Admiral Krestik watched the destruction through his fleet's tactical displays, mandibles clicking with grim satisfaction. 17 human settlements had been reduced to glowing craters in the first 30 minutes. The orbital platforms remained dark and lifeless, exactly as his sensors had predicted. Excellent execution, he murmured to Velthaner. Continue bombardment of grid sectors 12 through the universe exploded. New Cascadia's surface erupted in a pillar of coherent energy that stretched from the planet's core to the edge of its magnetosphere. The beam, if it could be called, that was 3 kilometers wide and composed of matter that shouldn't exist. It tore through space-time itself, leaving ripples in reality that made Krestik's compound eyes water. The energy lance struck the heavy cruiser Skeshmara amidships, and the vessel simply ceased. Not destroyed, not vaporized, it ceased to exist on a fundamental level. The atoms that had comprised 5,000 Vorthic warriors scattered across 17 light-years in the span of a nanosecond. Evasive maneuvers, Krestik roared, but his words were lost in the chaos erupting across his bridge. Warning klaxons wailed as gravitational anomalies began appearing. Throughout the fleet formation, space itself was becoming unstable. A second energy lance emerged from New Cascadia's northern hemisphere, tracking the destroyer Velkareth with predatory precision. Captain Nikolon had perhaps 3 seconds to realize his death was approaching at the speed of light. The destroyer's emergency jump drive activated a fraction too late. The ship blinked out of existence just as the beam reached its position, creating a spectacular explosion that sent shock waves across the electromagnetic spectrum. What in the name of the Void Fathers is that? Velthanar's voice cracked with terror. Krestik's tactical implant was struggling to process the energy readings. Whatever was firing at them was drawing power directly from New Cascadia's planetary core, channeling it through technology that made hegemony science look like stone knives and burskins. The energy signatures were off the scale. Each shot contained enough power to ignite a gas giant. All ships, scatter formation, he commanded. Activate jump drives and prepare for emergency retreat. But even as the words left his mouth, Krestik knew they were too late. The planet's surface was now erupting with dozens of weapon emplacements, each one targeting a different ship in his fleet. These weren't the crude kinetic weapons or fusion missiles that humans typically employed. These were weapons that belonged in the fever dreams of theoretical physicists. The battle cruiser Murthagan took a glancing hit from what appeared to be a gravity well generator. The ship's hull didn't just buckle, it folded in on itself, creating impossible geometric shapes as the vessel collapsed into a space smaller than its own bridge. The screams of the crew were cut short as their atoms were compressed into a singularity that winked out of existence. "Admiral," his communications officer shrieked. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet." "Put it through," Krestik snarled, desperate for any information that might explain the slaughter unfolding around him. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made Krestik's thorax contract with primal fear. It was human, but not quite. The man's eyes glowed with the same energy that was tearing apart the hegemony fleet. His skin had a metallic sheen, and when he smiled, his teeth gleamed like polished chrome. "Greetings, Admiral Krestik," the figure said, his voice carrying an impossible harmonic that seemed to resonate in the quantum foam itself. "I am Marcus Voidrite, Director of New Cascadia's Defensive Protocol. Thank you for coming." "What are you?" Krestik demanded, watching in horror as another of his ships was reduced to component atoms. "I'm what humanity becomes when we stop pretending to play fair," Voidrite replied. "Did you really think we'd abandon a world without leaving a welcoming committee?" The transmission cut out just as a fourth energy lance reached toward the heavens, seeking another victim. Krestik's fleet was scattering in panic, but the weapons were tracking them with impossible accuracy. Whatever technology the humans had hidden beneath New Cascadia's surface, it was turning the laws of physics into suggestions. As the heavy cruiser Zeth Korvac was twisted into non-existence by forces that shouldn't be possible, Krestik realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't just abandoned New Cascadia. They had turned it into the galaxy's most sophisticated mousetrap. The hegemony fleet scattered like frightened insects, their formation dissolving into chaos as more weapons emerged from New Cascadia's surface. What had appeared to be an abandoned mining world was revealing itself as something far more sinister, a fortress built into the planet's very bones, armed with technology that violated every known law of physics. Admiral Krestik watched his tactical display in growing horror as red icons representing his ships blinked out of existence. One by one, the destroyers Velkareth and Murthagan were gone. The heavy cruiser Skeshmara had been reduced to quantum foam. Now the battle cruiser Morvac was caught in what appeared to be a localized time dilation field, its hull aging millennia, in seconds until it crumbled to dust. "Damage report," he barked at his bridge crew. Though he could see the numbers himself, 18 ships destroyed in the first 15 minutes of engagement. His remaining 49 vessels were fleeing in all directions, their captains abandoning tactical doctrine in favor of pure survival instinct. Admiral Velthaner's voice was barely above a whisper. Sensors are detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Whatever they're preparing next, it's going to make their previous attacks look like warning shots. Through the main view screen, Krestik could see New Cascadia beginning to glow, not with the artificial light of cities or industrial complexes, but with something deeper, a radiance that seemed to emanate from the planet's core itself. Geometric patterns were appearing on the surface, vast crystalline structures rising from the earth like the bones of some impossible beast. All ships, he transmitted on emergency frequencies. Implement Protocol 7. Full retreat to the edge of the system. We need to regroup. And his words were cut off as space itself began to warp around New Cascadia. The planet was growing larger, not through any physical expansion, but through some fundamental alteration of local spacetime. Distances were becoming meaningless, with some of his fleeing ships finding themselves pulled back toward the planet despite their engines running at maximum output. Sir, his navigation officer reported, mandibles clicking with terror. Hyperjump is impossible. Something is interfering with our FTL drives. We're trapped in normal space. Krestik's thorax went cold. Without hyperjump capability, his fleet was stranded in this system with whatever nightmare the humans had awakened. He opened a channel to his remaining captains, knowing that panic was spreading through the fleet like a virus. All vessels, this is Admiral Krestik. Maintain formation discipline. We are dealing with unknown human technology, but we are still Vorthic warriors. We will not flee like prey animals from. The transmission died as New Cascadia's surface erupted in a web of energy that stretched across the entire star system. The network of light connected every planet, every asteroid, every piece of debris larger than a grain of sand. It was as if the humans had turned the entire system into a single, massive weapon. By the Void Fathers, Velthaner breathed, they've weaponized the system itself. That was when Krestik realized the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a defensive system, it was a trap that had been decades in the making. The humans hadn't abandoned New Cascadia. They had transformed it into something that existed solely to kill anyone who threatened it. The cruiser Neth Korvac was the first to be caught in the energy web. Instead of being destroyed, it was lifted bodily from its position and hurled toward New Cascadia at a significant fraction of light speed. Krestik watched in fascination and horror as the ship struck the planet's surface and was absorbed into it, disappearing beneath the surface as if the planet itself were alive and feeding. The planet is eating our ships, someone whispered on the command channel. That was when Marcus Voidright's image appeared on every screen in the fleet. Simultaneously, his transformation had progressed further. His skin now gleamed like polished metal, and his eyes had become pools of the same energy that was tearing apart the hegemony fleet. Admiral Krestik, Voidright said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in the quantum vacuum. You came here to glass a human world, to exterminate 2 million of our people, to claim our resources and add another trophy to your species collection. The energy web pulsed, and 3 more Vorthok ships were pulled from their positions and hurled toward New Cascadia's hungry surface. But we left you a different kind of gift, Voidright continued. New Cascadia isn't just a colony anymore. It's a weapon. It's a statement. It's what happens when you threaten human children. Krestik tried to respond, but found his voice trapped in his throat. On a tactical display, more ships were being consumed by the planet's inexorable hunger. His fleet, the pride of the hegemony navy, was being methodically devoured by a world that had become a living instrument of death. You wanted to see what humans do when we're desperate, Voidright said. Congratulations, Admiral. You're about to become an object lesson for the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Krestik's remaining 37 ships formed a desperate defensive sphere at the edge of New Cascadia's influence, their weapons trained on the planet that had become their executioner. The energy web stretched between them and escape, pulsing with malevolent intelligence. Every attempt to break through had resulted in ships being seized and dragged into the planet's consuming embrace. Sir, reported Captain Velkrishan from the destroyer Thekanarath, we've analyzed the energy patterns. The field strength decreases exponentially with distance from the planet. If we concentrate our firepower on a single point, we might be able to create a breach. Krestik's mandibles clicked as he considered the desperate gambit. It would require sacrificing several ships to create an opening that the rest might escape through. But what choice did they have? The alternative was to wait for the planet to methodically consume them all. All ships, he transmitted, prepare for concentrated bombardment on grid reference Theta 7. Destroyers Velkarith, Murthik, and Zesh Korvac will lead the assault. The rest of the fleet will follow through any breach we create. The 3 designated destroyers accelerated toward the energy web, their crews knowing they were likely flying to their deaths. Their plasma cannons opened fire in unison, pouring terawatts of energy into a single point in the barrier. For a moment, it seemed the web flickered and began to thin dot, then New Cascadia responded. The planet's surface erupted with thousands of weapon emplacements, each one targeting a different ship in Krestik's fleet. But these weren't the exotic energy weapons from before. These were kinetic accelerators, massive railguns that fired projectiles at relativistic speeds. The destroyer Velkarith took a direct hit amidships. The tungsten slug, traveling at 90% of light speed, punched through the ship's hull. Like it was tissue paper, the vessel broke in half, its reactor core destabilizing in a brief fusion fire that illuminated the entire fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Krestik roared, but the railgun fire was too concentrated, too accurate. The humans had turned their planet into a fortress bristling with hundreds of thousands of weapons, each one guided by targeting systems that could track individual molecules. The cruiser Nefikar tried to hide behind an asteroid, only to watch the rocky mass vaporize under concentrated railgun fire. The heavy destroyer Murthik attempted to use its jump drive, but space-time itself seemed to resist the effort. The ship stretched and twisted before snapping back into normal space, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere. Admiral Velthanar's voice was barely audible over the sound of their own ship's hull groaning under the stress of evasive maneuvers. The planet is tracking our movements. It's not just shooting at where we are, it's shooting at where we're going to be. That was when Krestik realized the true horror of their situation. The planet wasn't just armed, it was intelligent. Every weapon, every energy web, every defensive system was part of a single, vast consciousness that was using their own tactical patterns against them. Marcus Voidright's image appeared on the main screen again, but his transformation was now complete. He no longer looked human, his form had become something composed of living metal and controlled energy, a hybrid of flesh and technology that pulsed with the same power that flowed through New Cascadia's weapons. Do you understand now, Admiral? Voidright's voice carried harmonics that made the ship's hull ring like a bell. This isn't just a battle, it's a lesson. When humanity is pushed to the edge, we don't just push back, we become the edge. The energy web suddenly collapsed inward, drawing Krestik's scattered fleet toward New Cascadia like iron filings to a magnet. Ships that had been fleeing at maximum velocity found themselves pulled inexorably toward the planet's surface, their engines useless against the gravitational forces being brought to bear. All ships, Krestik transmitted in desperation, overload your reactors. If we're going to die, we'll take this cursed world with us. But even as he gave the order, he knew it was futile. The cruiser Velkorvik tried to implement a reactor overload, only to watch in horror as its fusion core was simply turned off. The energy that should have created a star-killing explosion dissipated harmlessly into the vacuum. You can't even die properly without our permission, Voidright observed, his metallic features twisting into something that might have been amusement. New Cascadia controls all energy within this system now. Your reactors, your weapons, your life support, and all exist at our sufferance. The destroyer Thekanara struck New Cascadia's surface first, its hull crumpling like paper before being absorbed into the planet's crystalline surface. The crew's screams cut off abruptly as they were incorporated into the planet's growing consciousness. Krestik watched 20 more ships follow the same path, their hulls dissolving into the planet's hungry surface. Each absorbed vessel seemed to make New Cascadia stronger, its energy signatures increasing exponentially with every meal. This is what extinction looks like, Admiral, Voidright said as the remaining hegemony ships were pulled down into New Cascadia's embrace. Not with a bang, but with understanding. You came here to commit genocide. Instead, you've become part of something greater. As his own flagship was drawn toward the planet's surface, Krestik realized that humanity hadn't just defended their colony, they had created a weapon that would serve as a warning to the entire galaxy. New Cascadia would remember this day, and it would be waiting for the next species that decided to threaten human children. The final dozen ships of Admiral Krestik's fleet hung suspended in New Cascadia's gravitational web, their hulls groaning, under impossible stresses as the planet prepared to consume them. But in that moment of seeming defeat, something unexpected happened. The energy readings from the hegemony vessels began to spike. Krestik had forgotten about the Vorthic battle. Rage, the ancient genetic programming that transformed his species into berserkers when faced with Storie, and death across his remaining ships. Crews were entering the final furious state where pain became meaningless, where tactical thinking gave way to pure, savage instinct. All ships. He roared into the communication array, his own voice distorting as the rage took hold. Full weapons release. If we die today, we die as Vorthic warriors. The transformation was immediate and terrible. The cruiser Velmorvik opened fire with everything in its arsenal, its plasma cannons overloading as the crew poured their ship's entire power grid into the weapons. The destroyer BlackHFY followed suit, its hull beginning to glow cherry red from the heat of overcharged systems. New Cascadia's surface responded with its own crescendo of violence. Thousands of railgun emplacements opened fire simultaneously, filling space with relativistic projectiles. Energy lances erupted from crystalline spires, while gravity wells blossomed like flowers of destruction throughout the battlefield. The heavy cruiser Murthagan took the first concentrated barrage, its shields flaring and dying under the assault. But instead of being destroyed, the ship's crew activated something the humans hadn't anticipated: a fusion ram. The vessel's entire engine section was converted into a makeshift fusion bomb, turning the ship into a projectile capable of cracking a planet's crust. Marcus Voidrat's metallic features showed the first hint of concern as Murthagan accelerated toward New Cascadia's surface at 30% of light speed. The planet's defensive grid converged on the incoming ship, but the Vorthic crew had already passed beyond pain, beyond fear, beyond rational thought. The impact was visible from 3-star systems away. Murthagan struck New Cascadia's northern hemisphere with the force of a small asteroid, punching through the crystalline surface and detonating its overloaded reactor core. Deep within the planet's defensive network, the explosion sent shockwaves through the energy web, causing it to flicker and destabilize. "Impossible," Voidrat snarled, his voice now carrying harmonic distortions. "This planet is invulnerable. We've integrated technology from," his words were cut off as the destroyer Velcristian followed Murthagan's example, diving toward the planet's surface with its entire crew screaming Vorthic battle hymns. The ship's impact sent another shockwave through New Cascadia's network, and for the first time since the battle began, one of the planet's energy spires went dark. Krestik felt a savage joy surge through his thorax. They were dying, but they were taking this cursed world with them, all remaining ships. He transmitted, "Implement Protocol Extinction. Death to the humans." Protocol Extinction was the Vorthic hegemony's ultimate weapon, the simultaneous detonation of an entire fleet's worth of fusion reactors, designed to sterilize planets too dangerous to be allowed to exist. It hadn't been used in over a century, but these circumstances demanded nothing less than total annihilation. The remaining 9 ships began their final runs toward New Cascadia's surface, their crews howling with battle fury as they prepared to embrace death. The planet's defenses reached a crescendo of violence, thousands of weapons tracking the incoming vessels and filling space with enough firepower to glass a continent. The destroyer BlackHFY disintegrated under concentrated railgun fire, its atoms scattered across the system. The cruiser Velmorvik was caught in a gravity well and crushed to the size of a marble. But each ship that died took more of New Cascadia's defenses with it, overwhelming the planet's ability to coordinate its responses. Krestik's own flagship, the heavy cruiser Domination of Stars, was the last to make its run. The ship's hull was already compromised, atmosphere bleeding from dozens of breaches. But the crew's battle rage had reached a fever pitch that made injury meaningless. For the hegemony, Krestik roared as his ship dove toward New Cascadia's surface. "For the honor of the Vorthic, death to all who oppose us." The planet's remaining weapons converged on the Domination of Stars, energy lances and railgun slugs, turning space around the ship into a maelstrom of destruction. The vessel's shields failed completely, its hull beginning to break apart under the assault. But it was too late to stop the inevitable. The Domination of Stars struck New Cascadia's equatorial region with the force of a natural disaster, its fusion reactor detonating microseconds later. The explosion sent a pillar of fire reaching toward the planet's core, where it met the detonations from the other ships that had preceded it. For a moment, New Cascadia's surface went completely dark. The energy web collapsed, The weapon emplacements fell silent, and even Marcus Voidright's image vanished from the communication channels. In the sudden silence, Admiral Krestik allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had failed to escape, failed to complete their mission, failed to return to the hegemony with news of their discovery. But they had succeeded in proving that even the most advanced human technology could be overcome by Vorthic determination. Then New Cascadia began to laugh. The laughter that emanated from New Cascadia's battered surface was not human. It resonated through subspace itself, a sound that bypassed the ears and struck directly at the primitive fear centers of any creature that heard it. Admiral Krestik, dying in the wreckage of his command chair, felt his thorax contract with primordial terror. The planet's surface was reforming itself, the massive craters left by the Vorthic ship's suicide runs filling with liquid metal that cooled and hardened into new defensive structures. But these weren't the same crystalline spires from before. These were something organic, something that pulsed with malevolent life. Marcus Voidright's image reappeared on the few functioning screens scattered throughout the domination of Star's wreckage. But his transformation was now complete. He no longer retained any semblance of humanity. His form had become a shifting mass of energy and exotic matter, held together by forces that existed beyond normal physics. Did you really think, Voidright's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, that we would build a weapon without redundancies, that we would create New Cascadia without considering the possibility of exactly this scenario? Krestik tried to speak, but his respiratory system was failing. Through the ship's breached hull, he could see New Cascadia's surface erupting with new weapons, not technological constructs, but living entities that breathed fire and bled plasma. You see, Admiral, Voidright continued, his form becoming more abstract with each passing moment. The first wave of defenses was just the beginning. What you've done, what your brave crews accomplished with their sacrifice, was to activate New Cascadia's true purpose. The planet's mass was increasing, its gravitational field strengthening beyond anything that should be possible for a world of its size. Space-time itself was bending around New Cascadia, creating a region where the laws of physics were nothing more than suggestions. We didn't just weaponize this planet, Voidright explained, his voice now carrying harmonics that existed in 11 dimensions. We transcended it. New Cascadia is no longer bound by the limitations of matter and energy. It has become something that exists in the spaces between quantum states. Through his failing vision, Krestik could see the impossible truth. The debris from his destroyed fleet wasn't being consumed by the planet, it was being integrated into something larger. The atoms of his dead warriors were being reorganized, their consciousness preserved and enhanced, their memories and experiences added to New Cascadia's growing intelligence. Your crews aren't dead, Admiral, Voidright said, and now Krestik could hear other voices harmonizing with his Vorthic voices, speaking in perfect unison. They're part of us now. They're helping us understand your species, your tactics, your weaknesses. The horror of it struck Krestik like a physical blow. The planet wasn't just a weapon, it was a virus, something that consumed and transformed everything it touched, and now it had the knowledge and memories of an entire hegemony battle fleet. You came here to commit genocide, Voidright continued, his form beginning to merge with the planet itself. Instead, you've given us the tools to prevent genocide from ever happening again. New Cascadia will spread across the galaxy, creating a network of consciousness that will protect all sentient life. From species like yours, Krestik felt his own consciousness beginning to fade, but as it did, he became aware of something else, a vast intelligence reaching out to him, offering him a choice. He could die as he was, the last free Vorthic in the system, or he could join the network, become part of something greater than his individual existence. The choice was taken from him as his body finally succumbed to its injuries. But in the moments before death, he felt his mind being gently lifted from his failing flesh, his memories and experiences cataloged and preserved within New Cascadia's growing consciousness. When awareness returned, Krestik found himself elsewhere. He retained his identity, his memories, his sense of self, but he was also connected to something vast and complex, a network of minds that spanned the entire planet. He could feel the presence of his dead crews, their consciousness preserved and enhanced within the planetary matrix. Welcome, Admiral, came a familiar voice. Voidright stood before him in this impossible space, but now he looked human again, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary. Your species had to see the consequences of your actions. What are you? Krestik asked, surprised to find that he could still speak, still think independently despite being part of the network. "We're what humanity becomes when we're pushed beyond our limits," Voidrite replied. "New Cascadia isn't just a colony or a weapon, it's an evolution. A step towards something that can protect the galaxy from species that view genocide as policy. Around them, the consciousness of New Cascadia pulsed with purpose. The planet was already beginning to spread, sending out tendrils of exotic matter toward other star systems. But Krestik could feel the intelligence behind it, could sense that it wasn't spreading to conquer, it was spreading to protect. "Your hegemony will receive a message," Voidrite explained. "They'll learn what happened here, what their war fleet discovered, and they'll have to decide whether they want to join the network voluntarily or wait for New Cascadia to make the choice for them." Krestik felt a moment of despair for his species, but it was quickly replaced by something else: understanding. Within the network, he could access the memories and experiences of countless human minds, could see their history, their struggles, their desperate fight for survival in a hostile galaxy. The Vorthok hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They had threatened humanity's children, and in doing so, they had awakened something that would remake the galaxy itself. 3 standard months after the Battle of New Cascadia, the Vorthok Hegemony Council convened an emergency session on their homeworld of Kreshnavak. The ornate biochambers of the Grand Assembly buzzed with agitated conversation, as representatives from across the hegemony tried to comprehend the impossible reports flowing in. From their border worlds, High Counselor Veltherin raised his primary appendages for silence, his ancient carapace bearing the scars of a dozen wars. "The situation is beyond our previous understanding," he began, his voice carrying the weight of species-wide dread. "New Cascadia has expanded. The holographic displays around the chamber showed a region of space that defied conventional understanding. What had once been a single human colony world had become something that existed across multiple star systems simultaneously, its influence spreading through dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. Our border colonies have reported visitors," continued Veltherin, "beings that appear to be Admiral Krestik and his officers. But enhanced, they deliver the same message to each world: join the network voluntarily, or be incorporated when New Cascadia arrives." A young counselor from the military caste spoke up, his mandibles rigid with traditional aggression. "Then we mobilize the full might of the hegemony. We call upon our allies. We activate our planet killers." We do nothing," Veltherin interrupted, his tone carrying finality. "Because we cannot fight something that exists in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Because our planet killers have been deactivated. Because 3 of our client species have already chosen to join the network voluntarily." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. New Cascadia hadn't just defended itself, it had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. Species that had warred for millennia were now working together within the network, their conflicts resolved through direct mental connection and shared experience. "I have been in communication with the entity that calls itself Marcus Voidrite," Veltherin continued. "It has made us an offer." The holographic display shifted to show Voidrite's image, not the metallic horror from the battle, but the gentle human form he had worn when speaking to Admiral Krestik in the network. Behind him, dozens of other figures were visible humans, Vorthok, members of species the hegemony had never encountered, all existing in harmony within New Cascadia's embrace. "Citizens of the Vorthok hegemony," Voidrite's voice carried across the chamber with impossible clarity. "Your Admiral Krestik and his warriors live on within our network. They have experienced what we offer: not death, not conquest, but transcendence. Unity without the loss of individual identity, peace without the surrender of cultural heritage." Behind Voidrite, Admiral Krestik stepped forward. He looked exactly as he had in life, but his eyes held a depth that spoke of expanded consciousness. "My people," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated with every Vorthok present. "I have seen the truth of what we face. This is not conquest, it is evolution. The network preserves everything we are while offering us something greater." High Counselor Veltherin felt his thorax tighten. "What do you offer us?" "The same choice we offer every species," Voidrite replied. "Join us willingly and help us build a galaxy where genocide is impossible because all species understand each other on a fundamental level. Or wait, we will eventually reach you anyway. The network grows with each world, each species that sees the wisdom of unity over conflict. And if we refuse entirely," demanded the young military counselor. Krestik answered before Voidrite could speak. Then you will be incorporated anyway, because the network will not allow any species to threaten the extinction of another. We came to New Cascadia to commit genocide, and in doing so, we created something that makes genocide impossible. The chamber erupted in agitated discussion, but Veltharion could see the truth in the tactical displays. New Cascadia's influence was spreading at an exponential rate, not through conquest, but through voluntary adoption. Species were choosing to join the network after witnessing its benefits: the end of war, the sharing of knowledge, the expansion of consciousness beyond individual limitations. We need time to consider, Veltharion said finally. Of course. Voidrite nodded, but understand that time is not unlimited. The network grows stronger with each passing day, and there are other species in the galaxy who still view genocide as policy. They will need to be addressed. The transmission ended, leaving the Hegemony Council in stunned silence. They had sought to destroy humanity's furthest colony and claim it as their own. Instead, they had awakened something that was reshaping the galaxy itself. 5 years later, the being that had once been Marcus Voidrite stood on the observation deck of New Cascadia's primary consciousness hub, watching as another star system joined the network. The Zelrani Collective had chosen voluntary integration after witnessing the prosperity and peace that network membership brought to their neighbors. Do you ever regret it? Asked the consciousness that had once been Admiral Krestik, manifesting beside him in the shared mental space. Regret what? Voidrite replied, his attention partially focused on the delicate process of integrating an entire species into the network without overwhelming their individual identities. Becoming this, leaving humanity behind. Voidrite considered the question with the vast processing power of the network behind him. I didn't leave humanity behind, he said finally. I became what humanity needed to become to survive in a galaxy full of species. Like the old hegemony, what we all needed to become. Through the network, he could feel the presence of billions of minds: human, Vorthek, Zelrani, and dozens of other species, all connected but retaining their individual personalities and cultures. Wars had not been eliminated, but they had been transformed into philosophical debates conducted through direct mental connection. Genocide had become impossible because no species could destroy another without feeling their pain directly. The hegemony chose integration 6 months ago, Krestik noted. Veltharion says it was the most difficult decision in their history and the most necessary. Voidrite replied, your species had a choice: evolve or face extinction. You chose evolution. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the newest member worlds of the network began to share their knowledge and culture with the collective. Scientists from a dozen species worked together on problems that would have taken centuries to solve in isolation. Artists created works that drew from the emotional experiences of entire civilizations. What happens when we encounter a species that refuses integration entirely? Krestik asked. One that sees the network as an existential threat, Voidrite's expression grew somber. Then we do what we were created to do. We protect the innocent and ensure that genocide never happens again, no matter the cost. In the depths of space, New Cascadia pulsed with the heartbeat of 1 trillion minds. The network had grown beyond its original human creators, beyond the Vorthek who had inadvertently helped birth it, beyond the limitations of individual species. It had become something new, a collective consciousness that spanned the galaxy, dedicated to the protection of all sentient life. The humans who had once lived on New Cascadia had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had found a way to end the cycle of genocide and war that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. They had created a network of consciousness that preserved individuality while promoting unity, that celebrated diversity while ensuring mutual understanding. And they had done it all because someone had threatened their children die in the end. That might have been the most human thing of all. The willingness to become something beyond humanity itself in order to protect what they loved. The Vorthek hegemony had sought to destroy a human colony and instead had awakened a force that would protect all colonies, all species, all sentient life in the galaxy. The network grew, and with it, the promise that no species would ever again face extinction at the hands of another. It was a victory that resonated across the cosmos, a testament to what could be achieved when survival became evolution, when desperation became transcendence. New Cascadia had been abandoned by its human colonists, but it had been activated by something far greater: the unbreakable human will to protect the innocent. No matter the cost to themselves, the galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Kim pressed her crystalline enhanced hand against the Velthari control panel. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white for a terrifying moment, before snapping back to focus with inhuman intensity. "I'm in," she said, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that made Webb's teeth ache. "The orbital sterilization array is still charging, but the targeting systems are offline. Without the central node, they can't coordinate the planetary bombardment." Outside, the sound of battle was intensifying. Webb could hear the distinctive whine of human railguns mixing with the alien hum of Velthari plasma weapons through the facility's reinforced windows. He watched as resistance fighters engaged the aliens in running battles through the rubble of Seattle. "How long do we have? The backup systems are trying to establish a new network hierarchy, maybe 2 hours before they regain full coordination." But Marcus, Dr. Kim's transformed features showed an expression of profound horror. "I can see their plans. This isn't just about resources. They're building something with the processed material from every world they've conquered. Something massive." "What kind of something?" Before Dr. Kim could answer, the facility's walls shook under a massive impact. Through the smoke and debris, Webb saw Velthari heavy assault units breaching the outer defenses. These weren't the worker drones they'd been fighting. These were purpose-built war machines. Crystalline monsters the size of tanks with plasma cannons that could melt through steel. "Fall back to the inner chambers," Webb ordered his remaining fighters. "We hold here as long as possible." But Dr. Kim grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No, we don't hold, we attack. I know how to hurt them now." She moved to a larger control console, her hybrid nature allowing her to interface directly with Velthari technology. Their consciousness isn't just networked, it's hierarchical. Remove enough nodes, and the entire structure collapses into chaos. "We already destroyed their primary node. That was just the local coordinator. The real network spans multiple star systems." Dr. Kim's crystalline eyes began to glow as she accessed deeper levels of the alien system. "But there's a weakness. The network requires quantum entanglement between nodes to maintain coherence across interstellar distances. If we can disrupt that entanglement..." The facility shuddered again as Velthari forces pressed their attack. Webb could hear his people falling back, their ammunition running low. Sergeant Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, we can't hold them much longer. These new units are adapting to our electromagnetic weapons. How do we disrupt quantum entanglement?" Webb asked Dr. Kim urgently. "The processing facilities aren't just refineries, they're quantum resonance chambers. They're using the processed material from Earth to build components for their interstellar network." Dr. Kim's voice was becoming less human by the moment, but her determination remained fierce. "If we overload the resonance chambers, the quantum feedback will cascade through their entire network." "What's the range on that kind of cascade?" "Conservative estimate. Everything within 50 light years." Webb stared at her. "You're talking about destroying every Velthari fleet in local space. I'm talking about crippling their entire galactic network. Without quantum coordination, they'll be reduced to individual units operating on basic programming, like insects without a hive mind." An explosion rocked the facility as Velthari forces breached the inner perimeter. Webb could see them now, towering crystalline warriors moving with predatory grace, their weapons cutting through his defenders like paper. In minutes, they would reach the control center. "Do it," Webb ordered. Dr. Kim's hands moved across the control interface with inhuman speed. "The overload will take 90 seconds to cascade through the network. But Marcus, the quantum feedback will destroy every processing facility on Earth. Anyone still connected to the network will die." Webb looked around the room at the other partially converted humans. Some were helping with the technical work, their hybrid nature allowing them to interface with alien systems. Others stood guard, their enhanced strength and reflexes making them formidable fighters. All of them would die when the cascade initiated. "Doc, is there any way to save you?" She smiled sadly, her crystalline features reflecting the light from the overloading systems. "We stopped being fully human the moment they converted us, but we can still choose to die as humans." The first Velthari warrior breached the control room, its plasma weapon charging. Webb put 3 electromagnetic ground center mass, disrupting its systems long enough for one of the converted humans, a man who had once been a Seattle police officer, to tackle it with superhuman strength. 30 seconds to cascade, Dr. Kim announced. More aliens poured into the room. Webb's remaining fighters, maybe a dozen people, formed a desperate perimeter around the control console. They were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they only needed to hold for half a minute. Rodriguez went down first, a plasma bolt taking her in the chest. Then Jean, overwhelmed by 3 Velthari soldiers working in perfect coordination. One by one, humanity's last defenders fell. 10 seconds, Dr. Kim called out, even as a Velthari warrior raised its weapon toward her. Webb threw himself between them, feeling the plasma bolt burn through his armor and into his chest. As he collapsed, he saw Dr. Kim's hand slam down on the final control. The quantum cascade began instantly. Every Velthari processing facility on Earth exploded simultaneously, their quantum resonance chambers overloading in a chain reaction that propagated faster than light through the alien network. The effect was visible from orbit as pillars of energy erupted from every installation, reaching into space like fingers of pure destruction. The Velthari fleet, caught in the middle of their sterilization sequence, found their quantum coordination severed in an instant. Ships that had moved with perfect precision suddenly began drifting aimlessly, their crews reduced to individual units without collective purpose. On the surface, the effect was even more dramatic. Velthari forces simply stopped fighting, their programming unable to function without network guidance. Some continued their last received orders mechanically, others shut down entirely. A few began attacking each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Webb, dying on the floor of the control room, watched through the facility's windows as Seattle's skyline began to change. The Velthari harvesters had stopped their work, leaving half-dismantled buildings standing like broken teeth against the sky. In the distance, he could see human survivors emerging from hiding, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as they realized the aliens were no longer coordinating their attacks. Dr. Kim knelt beside him, her crystalline features already beginning to crack as the quantum feedback destroyed the network connections that had sustained her hybrid existence. Did we win? Webb asked weakly. We bought humanity time. She replied, her voice fading. The network is broken, but they'll try to rebuild. It might take them decades, maybe centuries, but they'll come back. Then we'll be ready. Dr. Kim smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human again. Yes, humans are good at learning from their mistakes, and we've learned so much. As Webb's vision faded, he could hear the sound of human voices calling to each other across the ruins, survivors finding each other, organizing rescue efforts, beginning the long work of rebuilding. The Velthari had taken much billions of lives, entire cities, vast swaths of natural resources, but they had failed to take humanity's most dangerous quality. They had failed to break the human spirit. 3 months later, Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed orbital station Defiance. Around her, the wreckage of the Velthari fleet drifted in slowly decaying orbits, their crystalline hulls dark and lifeless. Teams of salvage specialists worked carefully through the debris, studying alien technology and learning its secrets. Status report, she requested from her aide. Global population is stabilizing at approximately 4 billion. Reconstruction efforts are proceeding ahead of schedule in most regions. The converted humans who survived the cascade have provided invaluable intelligence on Velthari technology. Vasquez nodded, studying the tactical display that showed Earth's new defensive network. Orbital weapons platforms built with hybrid human-alien technology. Ships designed with quantum-resistant systems. Ground-based installations that could disrupt any network consciousness and our deep space monitoring. No sign of Velthari activity within 100 light years. The quantum cascade seems to have disabled their entire local network, but Vasquez knew they would return eventually. The Velthari had been consuming worlds for millennia. They wouldn't be stopped permanently by one defeat, but when they came back, they would find a different humanity waiting for them. They would find a species that had learned to fight dirty, to adapt alien technology, to turn the invaders' own weapons against them. They would find a humanity that had looked extinction in the face and chosen to spit in its eye. The Velthari had come to Earth seeking resources and left their dead in orbit as a monument to their defeat. But more than that, they had left something else, the knowledge that humanity could face the impossible and survive die in the end. That might be the most dangerous resource of all.